So with that intro, would you be kind enough to share a little bit of your background?
Happy to do that. And if the train goes too fast, just slow me down.
No worries.
Um, yeah, I'm a Brooklyn boy, born and raised, and went to NYU dental school. Took the subway, lived at home until I got married, which was a few years, a year or so after graduating dental school. 1978 grad, so we passed our 45th anniversary recently.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to make it back to New York in October for the reunion. So if any
For
of
the
my
50th, that's
if
an
any of my
exciting
classmates are
milestone.
listening, I hope to see you there. Um, yeah, so I did a residency at the Brooklyn VA hospital, which was a great year. I mean, the VA hospital was pretty tight on money for Crown and Bridge, but I think I did about 500 surgical extractions, a lot of perio surgery, a lot of endo. They had actually lost their oral surgery accreditation. So they had a senior resident, but no underlings. He was by himself running the whole program. And he had permission from the head of the department to get one of the GPRs, really involved. So instead of my one morning a week, I spent like probably half my residency with him, doing
Wow.
everything from LaForte osteotomies, apicos on palatal roots of upper molars, and full bony impactions, you name it. It was great.
And
Um,
that was right at the beginning of your career.
that was in my first year out of dental school. As a matter of
Wow.
fact, I actually put in an application to do an oral surgery residency at Cumberland Hospital at the end of my year. Most people do it at the beginning, so I knew I'd have a year hiatus, and I actually fell into my first practice in Brooklyn, right around the corner from where I grew up, where my parents still live. There was a dentist who was fleeing to upstate New York who, I literally shook hands in an hour of meeting the guy. He sold me his entire office with 400 families for $5,000 in 1979, equipment and everything.
I'd
And,
have to
and,
say,
and my father walked in with me and was there the whole time, of course, not really saying much, except on the way back to the house, which was a block and a half. He said to me, "I can't believe you gave him what he asked for." I said, "Dad, it was $5,000. What am I going to do? Offer him 3,500?"
I'm sure your father said yes. That's what you should have done.
Well, anyhow, from there, my wife I got married 6 months later. My wife got into medical school in Westchester County, New York Medical College. So we relocated to Westchester, loved it there, and ultimately bought a home office from a retiring dentist with one chair house practice. I ran both offices for about 10 years and then sold the office in Brooklyn to focus on the Westchester practice, which was in the house because I wanted to be there for the family growing up. And we expanded the house to a state of the art practice, 4 ops. I made it my business to be upstairs at 5 o'clock every day, dinner with the family, time with the kids after dinner, sometimes late dinner with the wife, and then tuck everybody in. And I was a night bird, so back down to the office at 10:30, 11 at night, and frequently not turn into bed till 1:30, wake up 7:30 for an 8 o'clock patient. Basically roll out of bed, quick shower, throw some clothes on, and get my hands in a mouth at 8 o'clock, and
Yeah.
it worked great. It was a great setup for a career and for balance of family life.
And
Um,
now, for our listeners' benefit, you and I share many things in common, but one of the things we share in common is both of us have four adult kids. So your family included 4 kids, and mine includes 4 kids.
yep, yep, and that was our path to that was an interesting one too. Um, we bought the house in Westchester in '81. My wife had about a year under her belt in medical school and was pregnant with our first child. and delivered her on February 28th of her second year in medical school. Perfect timing because she had the whole month of March off to study for part one of the national medical boards at the end of March. So she didn't miss a day of medical school.
Wow.
And 2 years later, 2 weeks before graduation, she delivered our son Mark, who most of the listeners probably know, or know of the name. There was one gentleman in South Dakota who about eight years or so ago had not heard of my son Mark. And I guess I made multiple references to Mark and Facebook during the lecture. And at one point, this guy raises his hand and said, "You keep making references to Mark. You know, who is this person?"
Who is this Mark?
My wife, who was in the first row, just started laughing hysterically, as well as the other half of the audience as well.
I think it's safe to say, Ed, that our listeners will recognize who Mark Zuckerberg is. I think our listeners will have that all over the world, as a matter of fact.
Anyhow, my wife took some time off after she finished her training, 10 years to be exact. We wound up having two more that she was able to be home with from the beginning. And then she went back later on in the mid-90s. But that didn't work out that well for her. Managed care had actually destroyed the practice of psychiatry way earlier than it had a significant dent on dental practice.